This is Industry Relations, a podcast at the intersection of real estate and technology from an insider's perspective with Rob Hahn and Greg Robertson. This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Cotality. CoreLogic is now Cotality. Same trusted technology and data, just with a new name that reflects their mission to unify property professionals, strengthen industry relationships, and drive innovation globally. Cotality powers tools you already know and love, like Matrix, the gold standard for MLS systems. There's One Home for agents who want to give their clients a more personalized collaboration experience. MLS Touch keeps you connected to the MLS no matter where you are. Realist gives you the insights to stand out as the local expert and tools to fill your funnel with high-value leads. The new One Homeowner platform keeps you top of mind and delivers value long after the deal is done. The new One Homeowner platform keeps you top of mind and delivers value long after the deal is done. Learn more at Cotality.com. And if your MLS is powered by Cotality, don't miss Camp Cotality for MLS staff and leadership this June. It's the perfect place to connect, learn, and see what's next. Our thanks to Cotality for sponsoring Industry Relations.
All right, I think we're live, Greg.
Hola!
So, hola.
I guess you have to...
Welcome to an episode of Industry Relations, the live stream. Yeah, we're not going to do the crazy intro. We got no feedback, but I think it's time we act more grown up. I am your host, the notorious Rob, and with me, my amazing co-host, the fabulous Greg Robertson, everyone.
I'm back from the bowels of DC.
Indeed. How was it?
Man.
So that's our topic. This is the live stream, NAR Midyear edition of the live stream. I know people are probably not fully filed in or anything, but if no one comes, that's okay too. You and I will banter either way. But yeah, man, how was it?
Well, I arrived there on Saturday, right? And I didn't leave. I left Wednesday morning. So it's Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night. So that's 4 days of gin and steaks, or sometimes not steaks. I think I had Chinese food at one point. So
in DC?
Yeah, so that was interesting. We went to the Cole had mentioned a place called Tiger Fork, which is pretty good. Not normally.
Well, I mean, DC is the best, it's the center of the universe.
Yeah,
it's the wealthiest,
there's a lot
best
there.
city. Yeah, if you ever watch Hunger Games, then you know that DC is where everything is. So
yeah. No, but I had a few things planned, and I think we talked about that a little bit. And
yeah, so tell me about this protest thing that you organized.
Well, okay, so here's a classic part about this, Rob. You'll appreciate this. Is that I gave a kind of an Easter egg, a hint about what I was going to do. Yeah. And this is all kind of a kind of, I would call it a publicity stunt for Tuesday, right?
Sure.
Cole and Dan and I's kind of new thing we're working on, which is ontuesday.com.
Yeah.
And what we decided to do was like, well, I'll tell the real backstory and then we'll see what happens here. But I had this kind of funny idea when all this kind of stuff is going around with CCP, right? Well, it turns out Compass was going to have their annual meeting was coming up, right? I thought it was, as half jokingly, like it would be funny if we got a bunch of guys that would go out and picket in front of the hotel of Compass,
right,
with signs that says, CCP is for me, stand up for the MLS, put it on the MLS, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we were kind of laughing about that, and then I would look at the calendar in it, and I go, oh, they're doing actually the Compass thing is on the same days as NAR Midyear. Right. And that's when I kind of like, I go, hey, wait a second. This could be a kind of a fun, you don't want to really poke the bear with Compass, but this might be an overall thing, just a funny little publicity stunt on it as well. So I said, let's do this in Midyear.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then it was a matter of, okay, so I got to make signs, get sticks for people to carry the signs with. Yeah. I got to get people there.
I was going to say, who are the people? Because that was my question.
Yeah.
So
we had, Cole was coming out there, and he was bringing his family, his wife.
Yeah.
Because they were going to a family trip in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And the person that I know in that area is Heather Elias.
Yeah.
So I called her up and kind of helping me with this little scheme
Sure.
I had, and she
Sure.
volunteered to help out with the signs, making the signs and getting there, so we didn't have to kind of transport that.
Yeah.
And then I was just trying to think, okay, how can I get, there's probably professional protesters you can hire,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
But and Cole had found some, but those they were pretty kind of like, I don't know if they're Antifa or whatever you call them or whatever, but for hire. But I mean, we weren't doing that. The budget was not that high. So what I ended up doing, Rob, is I called TaskRabbit, right? So these are the guys that are famous for like building IKEA furniture, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I created an account, and they have you can hire somebody to stand in line for you.
Yeah.
But there's also a section for event people.
Okay.
And I just wrote up a little story about, hey, we're a new real estate app, and we're going to do this and that. And I got 5 of them to say yes.
Yeah.
And it was like I think all together it was like $380.
I was gonna say it's easy money for them.
Yeah. All of them were so great, so pleasant. We kind of told them the story.
Yeah.
And then Cole got his little megaphone, and we knew that the MLS Forum was meeting at 1 p.m. on Monday.
Yeah.
So we parked ourselves, or Cole kind of arranged all this. And he made these flyers to hand out, which was basically just an ad for Tuesday, of course, right? And he started marching up and down in front of the Marriott, right? And it was great, dude. It worked perfectly because all the MLS guys were coming into the meeting. They were laughing, taking pictures with the signs.
Sure.
And then after a while, the hotel got a little bit.
They're like, get out.
Yeah, they're like, you can't do it right here, right? So, so then they said we had to move over to the side, down the sidewalk a little bit, but that really didn't even, do anything. And then we just ton of pictures and social media and everything else. So it was really, I mean, one of the most successful. You know how you kind of have an idea and you put it in your head, and then how that it comes to how close it is.
Sure.
I mean, this couldn't have gone better than I thought. I mean, it was just really just. I was just worried like there would be some sort of like, did I not think of like how is this going to be perceived, or somebody's going to have a heart attack or something? But no, it was all in good. Everybody got it. It was a good-natured fun. It was just a publicity stunt. It wasn't a protest. It was more of a rally.
Of course.
And we had a good time.
My favorite part of this is it was so obvious that this was done by a Democrat who's a big believer in astroturfing and paid protesters, and nothing organic about this at all.
Well, it's a publicity stunt. It never meant to be some sort of political rally.
I promised Sonny I would make fun of you. I was like, very Democrat of them. Awesome. Because there's no one actually out there that wants you to put into the MLS. At least not enough to come out and hold signs.
Yeah.
So that's cute, man. That's really clever.
No, really fun.
Right. And how was Lobby Bar?
So on Sunday night, I've done this the third year in a row where because the whole convention has moved downtown, and we used to be by the Warburton Park and the Omni Shoreham, and that Lobby Bar at the Omni Shoreham has been an old haunt of everybody and a favorite place to hang. They've had the same servers and bartenders there forever. So about 2 years ago, I go hey, as part of nostalgia, let's all just meet 9 p.m. on Sunday night and have a couple drinks in a place we used to, right? And I'm always worried about how many people showed, but of course, everybody showed, right? So it was and Lundy, Justin Lundy and Ari Course, Katie Smithson, they threw in for the first round. So anybody that showed up, they got a free drink or whatever. Yeah. And we just had a great time. Everybody, seeing each other, and that was a good way to kick off the week. And then, and then it was just kind of, bouncing around to different things. I think I have a new favorite lobby bar there. There's the Conrad Hotel, and it's got this great mid-century vibe to it, and like high ceilings and these floor-to-ceiling windows that look over, over the streets. And I mean, it was
very cool.
It was very cool, and so the scuttlebutt around there were kind of like centered around 3 things.
Yeah.
A little bit about our little publicity stunt, later on in the week. And then there was a van, and we'll put this in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll get into the substance of it.
Yeah, of somebody that says, "Welcome to the National Association of Zillow," and it had a QR
Zillow
code.
Association or something.
Yeah, something like
meeting,
that.
yeah.
And that was kind of.
I was wondering who did that. Do you know?
Well, I will tell you this: I asked somebody very high up at CoStar, and this is really funny. Their quote was like, "Listen, if it was us, there'd be 100 vans going around." So that was an unequivocal no. It was not CoStar. It was not Homes.com, right?
Well, so it was a denial. So
it was a
CoStar said
total
we didn't do
denial.
it.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Listen, I pressed and it's
Yeah.
like that was the last quote there. So
Yeah. Okay. So do we have? I mean, could have been Compass. Could it be just some disgruntled somebody?
could have been Compass.
Like, who did
It
it?
could have been Hobie Hanna. I don't know. I mean, it could be whoever, right? Whoever's kind of on that type of thing. I mean, I just think it was a waste of if you're going to do a protest or something, hey,
You're right. Do it like
link
yeah.
it to a product you want to sell for crying out loud, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
right.
I could that kind of thing, and then I went to MLS Forum on Monday, and it's just boring. There's a lot of substance.
Let's get into some of the substance. Like I've gotten, Andrea from Inman put this up where I think it was that meeting and the MLS committee meeting were closed to press.
The first one wasn't. The one on Monday was not.
Okay.
She was there. I was there.
Yeah.
But I think the second one or the one that was the second one, and then I think I'm not sure about today's on yesterday's meeting, or was it Thursday or Wednesday's meeting? I think we're closed.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's the deal? Like, why would they close the MLS policy committee meeting to press? What was discussed?
I don't know. I think my personal take, and I haven't talked to anybody over there, is just they just didn't want press to see how the sausage is made. I mean, that's the thing.
They've been all out. I mean, we've been seeing that for the last 20 years. So why this year all of a sudden no press?
I had no idea, because by the time I left Wednesday morning, and that was when they I think stopped it from coming.
So you don't know whether they discussed something super sensitive or so we.
I don't think I think it was mostly just not seeing So I don't think there's anything too nefarious about it, really, right? But you never know.
It's pretty nefarious,
huh?
It's pretty nefarious.
Well, you'd like to think that if that what you're doing is legit, that you don't care what other people, if anybody sees that, right? You want to be transparent as possible, and that obviously wasn't the case there.
Right. So the fact that you're banning press from a meeting, you have to have a pretty damn good reason why you're doing that.
Right.
So otherwise, it is nefarious, right? Or at least makes people think it was nefarious. So it's stupid. It's either nefarious or stupid, right? So that was just curious. Again, but maybe they discussed something. It's like, hey, here's this policy, super sensitive. We don't want press. We don't, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, that policy committee meeting tends to be filled with 500 people. So what's the point?
Yeah.
How is it confidential?
I think she still put out some stories about what obviously the gist of the meeting was, and some of the back and forth, because she has sources, right? But
sure,
it's nothing like being there for sure.
Sure, but that's the thing. It's like, so if you're not going to, and what I was expecting then was some sort of bombshell.
Right. That's
Right?
that's what tells me it was a nothing burger anyway, and it's just like, why add that kind of controversy to it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Why piss off media like that? I mean, not that media is whatever, but still, it's not like you're banning a couple of bloggers or podcasters. You're banning Inman and Wall Street Journal and New York Times. It didn't make any sense. I was just curious.
I did see Nicole there. I don't think I saw Deborah there, but I did see Nicole there.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into the substance, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously the big news to come out of it is they repealed the speech code, which is fantastic. Well, kind of fantastic. I'm still not super happy with it.
They didn't repeal it, right? Did they modify it?
They changed it.
Yeah.
They modified it. And then they got rid of commingling.
Yeah.
Which did not make as much news.
Right.
So, in a way, I'm kind of like, so let's just talk about it, right? The fact that they got rid of commingling, is this a big deal?
I've talked about this before. I think it is. I understand what's going on here, but it's only got a little more complicated because of, the Zillow of Zillow's kind of a Z-last thing, right? Because in my world, it's what I was afraid of is that, I think I called it like the seventh seal has been broken, right? It's like once you let commingling out, it's all over the place. Meaning now with commingling gone, if you decide not to put it on the MLS, and again, this is my thoughts before ZLAS, is that, okay, well now Compass or anybody else will have a direct feed. They can commingle on Zillow and do not have to be a part of the MLS, right? So you're just opening that thing up to say, okay, well, what, they're giving another path for people to go to without, and not on the MLS, right? So I thought it was a bad idea when they first started it to kind of get rid of it. And I'm not sure this is going to be helping the industry. But the problem is that NAR is so risk averse that they are doing these things, and it's going to, I don't know. I just don't think it's going to help long term here. But I mean, I understand why they have to do it.
Well, I think what I was curious about was like, I mean, I guess, but commingling was already optional. Mm-hmm. Right? That's how Zillow and NAR won at the trial, right, against Rex. So it's like, okay, if it's optional, like, why bother repealing it? But they repealed it anyway. So now, in a weird way, it feels to me like it's no longer optional. Like you cannot ban commingling now. Right. So it's the other way. Right. Yeah. Like the MLS now has no policy.
Opt in instead of opt out or whatever, right? Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could if a local MLS really wanted to, they could create a local rule, right? Because if NAR is completely silent, right, then presumably
hasn't Zillow basically made their own non-commingling rule, right?
What do you mean?
Well, there are listings that they are not going to put on the site if they don't do this, right? So it's in a sense,
I guess.
I mean, you can look at it different ways, right?
So I was just like, the fact that it made news, like, I guess it's news, but was anybody talking about that?
Well, they didn't do it until I think. Again, like most of the vendors and a lot of people leave that kind of Wednesday. And the meetings are like, the bigger meetings are like Thursday and maybe Wednesday afternoon, right? So I was gone by then, right? So I didn't hear about. I just saw the chatter on X and everything.
Right. Okay. And then obviously the 10-5 thing. Was anyone talking about that?
Not really, because of just the timing. I think as far as for my concern,
and MLSs aren't really that exercised about it, right? That's all the realtor side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's put it this way: what are MLSs talking about? Because the real value is not what is said publicly. The real value is not. It's never, what gets reported, right? It's always the hallway conversation. It's always the general mood. It's always the, lobby bar, right? So, tell me, man, like what are the top 3 things that MLSs are thinking about, concerned about right now?
I think the whole topic of consolidation is starting to kind of move a little bit more up, where I think it's okay. T3's Real Estate Almanac just came out, and I think there's 2 things there that were up substance that we can talk about here in regard to the meetings. Number 1 is by subscriber count, according to T3, Bright MLS is now the number 1 MLS in the country. So that was kind of like a big deal, and I saw Brian there. And number 2 is, I think it went down from 522 to 515, right? And they're talking about some of that due to kind of the non-realtor stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, the first topic was just MLSs are getting a little bit more, I think, aggressive on consolidation and asking, and looking for opportunities on there. Number 2 would be just the overall realtor account, right? So I think they said in one of the meetings, NAR expects it to be 1.4 by 2026. Right. So that's another thing. So what was the other thing that kind of came up? Another thing I just heard a lot of people saying was, just how small the trade show floor was. I mean, just how compact because back in the day at the Wardman Park, it was like 2 hallways, and you go to the side and around the corner and everything else. But it's just, and I started thinking about that. There was such amount of consolidation during the pandemic when a lot of companies got bought, and even pre that. Yeah. And there are some vendors that have come out since then, but it's it's a tough road to. It's tough to kind of get in the space, especially if you're looking with MLS data. And I'm starting to think about that a lot. And what else were people thinking about that was a common thread here? Yeah, I mean, those I think are pretty, the top ones that I kept of any themes that I got. Consolidation, member count. The lawsuit stuff is kind of dimmed down because I think MLSs are, getting back to life here is like going into talking about other things because that seems to be soothing a little bit. Yeah.
So did anybody address the Monestier appeal?
No. I talked to a couple people in a lobby bar.
Yeah.
One of them an attorney, and what was reflected back to me was that the way, some of the points that she was making were a little bit like, I think, and I don't want to dig. I mean, I think she's great. She has something, but I think the dig I heard was like, some law professor is not going to make any big difference here. Was the kind of vibe, right? And so I think nobody I was talking to thought that was going to really go anywhere. I mean, some great points and everything else, but just not going to go anywhere. So I don't, I think there was some people still wondering what the Novsevek, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, was what the outcomes of those might be happening, but I don't know.
The Novsevek one, yeah. The DOJ dropped its objection,
right?
So the settlement will go forward.
Yeah,
right. But they reserve their right to do something on their own.
Duh.
I don't know. It's just okay. So people are feeling comfortable, like okay, things are back to normal. I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing.
Well, I mean, there is just the overall country and everything else. I mean, you're in D.C. there, so some of that kind of comes up. I mean, as far as
what do you mean?
Well, tariffs and what that kind of talk and what that can mean for housing, right? I mean, affordability. It was always people were talking about that a bit. But these are kind of things a little bit outside of all of our control, unfortunately, right? Yeah. Right.
Especially on the MLS side, like MLS got nothing to do with affordability.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we talked about this last time about the buyer's market, and I kind of brought that up a bit, and there's still a lot of denial that's that is coming or is here or anything. Okay. And like that made me think kind of contrarian where I'm, when people are kind of are like poo-pooing that or like saying that's not going to happen, that makes me feel more real that it's actually going to happen, right?
All right. I guess what I think about is, all right, so consolidation is like more, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean? All right. Fawcett we have a chat here. Fawcett was not over the top excited with 10.5 changes. Do you know what that means?
No,
What's Fawcett?
Fawcett? No.
Yeah. I don't know. But, so, okay, you know what? I guess we got to talk about 10.5 changes.
Okay.
Obviously, everybody knows where I stand on that.
Yeah.
Like...
And why don't you just explain to some people, I mean, what that is?
Well, look, I think I've been one of the biggest opponents of 10.5 from day one.
And 10.5 having to do with the
speech code, right?
Exactly.
So what I know for a fact is when they first proposed this 10.5 speech code, I'm like, do not do this, right? This is a terrible idea. And what I proposed instead was I guess I'll call it a conduct unbecoming clause. So the idea was you could have, because Canada has this, right? You could just have a general code of ethics provision that says, members will not engage in conduct unbecoming a realtor, right? And then you could leave that more general,
right?
And then the grievance committee or the local pro standards committee could have, allow people to kind of make their own decisions, right? Like what's conduct unbecoming, I think if you go on Instagram and start dropping N bombs and, whatever, like gays must die, like I think most realtors looking at that would be like, that's just conduct unbecoming.
Right.
It's not
representative.
Yeah, it's not bringing glory to, like we don't want you as part of our club kind of idea, right? But because you don't then get into this sort of like race, gender, whatever, it's like there's lots of things that would be considered conduct unbecoming. And the story I'd most like to tell is, because Sonny was the one who told me about this, like there was a realtor who was caught in an empty listing having sex with his mistress. Like,
as one does.
That's conduct unbecoming. Right? That guy never lost his realtor status.
Right.
Right? Because somehow that there's no code of ethics provision that covers that. Right? And my thought was, you could kind of kill two birds, one stone, not infringing upon free speech rights of realtors, not fucking over like conservatives and Christians, but still cover cases where things are extreme, right? It's because all of the controversial stuff in the past, I don't know, ever since 10.5 was done, were like, two pastors who were brought up on charges because one wrote a letter, saying, hey, you know what, our church is not going to participate in this free lunch program because you're putting flyers about, gay pride month in like children's lunches. We're not, like, you guys do that if you want.
Right.
We're just not going to participate in it. That was a hate crime.
Right.
Right. Like, no, it's not. Like, that's ridiculous. You weaponize this against Christians and conservatives. The other is, Wilson Fowler, famously, like, ran for city council. He quoted a Bible verse in 2015 before the speech code was passed, and a bunch of activists weaponized 10.5 against him. I'm like, there's nobody that would have looked at that and said that is conduct unbecoming. Right. And you want to bring up like hate speech, like, hey man, if it's conduct unbecoming, you can cover it. But if it's not, then get off, like stop. Stop with this. So that's been my position all along. So I think 10.5 was immoral, unethical. I think it's likely illegal. And it was exposing NAR, all of the state and local associations, to significant potential liability, right? When Harmeet Dillon is the Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, right?
Right.
So it seems like maybe that and, the lawsuit out of Arizona and other, maybe it was Texas Senate actually really considering passing some legislation and other states looking at that. Maybe that's what convinced them. So in a way, I'm glad they did it. But there are two thoughts I have. Like, number one, they didn't get rid of it, which is a real problem. Right? It will come back to bite them in the ass. So just like commingling, they're going to have to come back and repeal this at some point. Mm-hmm. Right? So I'll start right. I'll just get off right off the bat. So they changed this. Like, the big changes, they made it where it's like harassment, right? And so I'll just, hold on, let me share this. Share. This is an Inman article that has a little bit more color. Right? All right, right? So Andrea, again, doing great work, right? Extensive debate. So originally, this is 10.5, right? Must not use harassing speech, hate speech, epithet slurs based on race, color, religion, blah, 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 blah. And they voted, obviously 2-1 to change it to this, right? And the big one is adversely affects their ability to access equal professional services or employment opportunities. So it made it much more geared towards what Article 10 prohibits, right? Because Article 10 basically prohibits discrimination in real estate services. So long story short, and I think this is what it comes down to right here, right? While realtors are encouraged to follow the principles of the Code of Ethics in all of their activities, a realtor shall be subject to disciplinary action under the Code of Ethics only with respect to their capacity as real estate professionals in association with the real estate businesses or in their real estate related activities, right? So
very narrow.
That would cover the pastors, right? Like Brandon Huber, as capacity as a pastor of a local church, says we don't want to participate with LGBT whatever. Okay, like that's not going to be covered under this, right? But if you start trying to convert some gay couple or something while you're showing them a house, you're going to get covered under this, right? And I think everyone's fine with that. Like, hey man, you're a realtor. Like, it's not this is not the time or place for you to start advocating whatever views, whatever your beliefs are, right? This is a time for you to just be a real estate professional. That part's good. What's not great about it, though, is that they kept this in, right? And I genuinely think now is the time for free speech advocates, I suppose, and maybe for conservatives and Christians, to show NAR why this is such a bad idea. Right? And I think they should do that by filing ethics charges against all the gay activists who weaponized 10.5 against conservatives and Christians. Because when they did that, they did it in a real estate context based on religion. Right? Now, the Wilson Faubers and the Brandon Hubers cannot be brought up on charges, but the realtors who filed against them can, and I think they should be. Right? Not to screw their lives over, but to now convince NAR and the board of directors and the professional standards committee, just get rid of this. This is a retarded virtue signaling speech, it's a bad idea, right? It's a bad idea. Just get rid of it. Article 10 itself is fine. It does more than enough. And then if you want to, one of the things that people seem to be really concerned about is the realtor brand, right? Having hate speech on social media is not reflective of the realtor brand, and you're always a realtor everywhere you're on social media. If that's your concern, then pass the conduct unbecoming clause, right? Because the conduct unbecoming could cover most of those scenarios, right? And not have it be so easily weaponized, right? I'm pleased, but I'm not thrilled.
Again, this is all politics. This is board stuff. This is policy things, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
we all wish things could happen at once, but the way this stuff works is it's all iterative, right? So this is one step down. Maybe the next step will be another step down. It doesn't have to. We wish it all happens at the same time, but maybe they're just going to stair-step it down until they placate one now, but then next year it's a little bit further, and then we all go away. I'm not. Although I get your point, I don't think going after another group to prove your point is going to be constructive here. I would rather they work on some other ways of doing it. And the country...
But what is constructive? I get you. But what's constructive? What's going to convince NAR leadership to finally just get rid of this?
Well, I don't know if it needs convincing. I think, it
clearly does, because they didn't.
But again, this is iterative, right? So it's like, okay, this is what we could get. NAR probably knows in their head, this is a bad idea. We need to walk this back, okay? They try to go all the way, little resistance. Okay, let's get this done. Next year, let's revisit this. This really isn't doing exactly things. I think they're going to try to do that, right?
I'm agreeing. Yeah. I agree, Greg, but here's the thing. For iteration to work, because you're looking at this from a software development standpoint, you do one iteration and you discover problems.
Right. I think they're going to
do another iteration,
discover some problems, and they probably know that.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, therefore, create problems for NAR so that they'll go, you know what? It's time for a second iteration. If you don't create problems, then they're like, oh, we solved that. That iteration solved it. My point is, you got to then create problems.
I think what we're doing now and what you write about, and what there's other topics too, but I don't think there's anybody out there that can say that you bringing this stuff to light has not helped this go along, right? So I think you speaking right now is going to give them another thing to go back to, a touch point to do that, right? And I know you don't want the credit or whatever else, but that happens, right? There's stuff out there that happens in that.
I'm saying I'm just a random podcaster, with zero power, and. As I like to say, quoting Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. With very little power comes very little responsibility. So I am exercising my very little power in that way. So that's all I'm saying. I agree with you. It's iterative. So I'm not blaming NAR. I'm not saying, no, this is good. This is a positive change. Okay, this goes a long way.
Now, if you got another one, that's fine. But I do remember some other topics that came up that just kind of popped in my head here, but go ahead.
Yeah. No. So we can move on. So let me say this before we move on. I don't know how this is done. I don't know how you do this, but as you know, NAR has pissed off at least half, if not more, of their membership with the speech code and with what they've done to persecute conservatives and Christians.
Some Christians.
Okay. I genuinely think, free advice for NAR, you don't have to believe me. What they ought to do is make restitution. Okay. They went and ruined a couple of good people's lives over a policy that they now recognize overreached. Right? Like Brandon Huber, Wilson Fauber, Chad DeVries not as much because he's already a top producer. It doesn't look like his, but his reputational harm was there. I think they should make restitution and they should apologize. That will go so far, so far. If Kevin Sears tomorrow comes out and says, "Hey, we changed 10.5," and there were a couple of instances where I think some injustice was done. Okay, Pastor Brandon Huber did nothing wrong, and we punished him, and so therefore we're going to make restitution. Here's a check for $50,000, right? And here's a letter of apology. We're going to reinstate you immediately. That would go so far in making everybody feel like, hey, you know what? NAR has learned this lesson, right? Like Christians especially are very forgiving people, but you have to ask for forgiveness. Okay, and NAR, I genuinely think NAR should do that. Look, there are going to be some cases where it really was hateful and really is like, again, if the conduct unbecoming clause existed, the rest of us look at it and go, yeah, that ain't cool, right, man. Like, you can't do that. We're not talking about restitution on that, but the really prominent cases right now, like Jamie Haynes, who spoke at a school board meeting as a mom, to go after her, make restitution. Right? You had to go and spend money on lawyers. Look, here, we'll cover that. Right? It's not going to cost NAR a ton of money. Okay? It's really not. We're not talking millions in damages. And it would go so far in restoring some of that relationship, with at least half of your membership. And Nikea Wright came out, and one of the big things she said was, we need to repair relationships with brokers and our members. Like, cool, good for you. This will be one concrete way you can repair a relationship with a whole bunch of people, right? Make restitution and apologize. So I'll end with that.
I mean, first step, we'll see what
Your
happens.
Yeah. I'm not holding my breath, but.
Okay, so the other thing and this came up randomly a few times, but I mean, everybody's there. It's just, the topic of CMLS, right? Because Danae is leaving, and I think that's going to, she's at the end of the year. And, I think that's got a lot of people guessing, what's going on because, the vibe also, I think this is where it kind of came out of, is that NAR seems to be signaling, de-risking themselves, right? And that might have to do with, having anything to do with MLS policy. And there's a lot of people that are, there's a lot of scuttlebutt about, CMLS or some organization. How are we going to, what policy we're going to be on, right? Let's come up with our own policy just to be prepared here. And that's got in discussions of, RISO, right? And CMLS. I mean, they're two different distinct organizations. Sam DeBoard, our friend of the show, is obviously CEO there. Danae's going to be off, Danae's going to be off the CMLS at the end of the year. It's going to be, so the thing there is like everybody wants to play the name game a little bit of who they think it would be. But the other stuff is like, should there be two organizations? Can it be one organization? And this has been fodder.
You mean CMLS?
Yeah,
or
this has been fodder for lobby bar stuff for a
merge?
long time, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think everybody thinks that Sam's a great, CEO over at Rizzo. There's other names that are being thrown out as far as thrown out there for CMLS, right? I mean, and I'm sure there's, I've heard,
Let's hear them.
Well, I mean, obviously, I think Renee just got announced as a COO. I mean, he has some Renee Galicia, right? Yeah, and then
not Galvan, because there are two prominent Renees, and let's just be sure, because otherwise HR people are going to freak out. It's like Renee, what?
But from people
Renee
I heard
Galicia.
was there's a lot of people that are probably going to think that. I've even heard I think Heather Elias was another name that I've been hearing a lot. And then just random after that of like, I think it'll be funny to see what that end up kind of be, what does it end up to be? Or if this does bring up a whole topic about should they merge
Merger.
and
Yeah.
what that, and then that I think comes up Sam and some other people that are around there too. So I think it's going to be an interesting few months as we get to the end of the year. The CMLS has hired a person, a group out there, CMT or something. I think that's the same group that NAR uses.
Some
search firm, right?
Firm.
So,
Yeah.
in my talking to people over at CMLS, I mean, well, you know, your wife works at CMLS; she'd know better than anybody. But there's.
But we have such like the Chinese.
Yeah,
I don't know
okay.
shit about what's going
All
on
right.
because she used to work at Zillow, and with the Chinese wall was insane. Like I'm finding out about stuff from Inman. Like
Well, from what I understand, they're very serious about this. Is nobody's been, it's up for anybody's grabs, right? So they're going to vet as many people.
Okay,
as
fine. Let's talk about this. So 2 questions. Do you think they should merge?
Do I think they should merge?
That CMLS and RESO should merge. That's question 1.
Yeah. I yes and no. Okay, I'll give you. Well, I mean, I'm just talking about budget, right? I mean, if there's a lot of money that they're giving either organization, I think it's mostly probably RESO, that they were spending on policy or anything else, and they're not going to do that. Well, let them, give them more money and have them take over the policy that we're spending over there, and like maybe we could make that, make it a better organization. Is it? There's 3 conferences, right? So it would be the annual that they've just renamed to Open House, and then RESO's fall and spring. I think there could be, but the culture, I think, at RESO is much different than it is at CMLS, right? So,
How so?
well, RESO's is more of a technical crowd, right? I mean, it's more of that type of thing, and really the CMLS is more an executive crowd, right? Not so much into the technical weeds, more in the policy and best practices and things like that, right? But there are some. You see a lot of MLS execs at RESO, right? So there's already some crossover, and it seems to be
Same
a lot of
vendors.
same vendors or whatever. So I mean, I don't know. I'm like torn because I don't want Danae or Sam to think, I'm trying to push anything. I'm just talking about what people are talking about, and if I would say off the top of my head, it would be pretty difficult because I think the cultures are so different. But
So it's 2 organizations.
yeah, but at the same time, I see the sponsors, the people that attend, they're about the same type of people in some ways, right? So it's like, what I would say. Hold on.
I would like you to commit. I would like you to have a commitment and make an opinion because Greg Robertson's opinion matters.
Yeah, you're trying to pull that back on me. Here's what I'll say, right? If they think about doing this, right, they should look at it from this point. And this is something that I told Dan and I said to our staff when we sold our company, right? I said, Lone Wolf has a culture, and it's this way, right? WNR Studios has a culture. We're going to come together, and we're going to have a new culture. We're going to build a new culture together. It's not going to be either or other of those. So if they do decide to do something like that, I would think about it from that standpoint. And then it's just a matter.
You're answering a question that no one asked. The question is, should there be 1 or 2 organizations? And you said yes and no. Like, that is not an answer. I need a commitment.
I can't commit, man. I can't commit.
I mean, it's just your opinion, dude. You're not making policy.
Should they be 1? Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
That's my answer today.
Right, because that leads to a second question, right? Then who should be the new CEO of CMLS?
Yeah, I mean,
And now it would be a combined CMLS RESO. Now, here's the thing. I'm on record as saying that Sam DeBoer should have been the new CEO of NAR when Nike Wright got it, right? And I understand he's a straight white man, and therefore he can't get a job at NAR anymore right now.
That's not right.
But I don't think that needs to be the case, especially now with this new world we live in. It would make a lot of sense if those 2 merged. Sam should just take over as CEO for both, right?
Well, I mean, there's pluses and minuses there, right? I mean, is that a new culture, or are you?
I mean, the minuses are the Sam and I disagree a lot, but even with that, I'm saying he's a very capable leader. I think he's proven himself, right? So that makes perfect sense. If they're not going to merge, that raises a different question. If they do remain 2. Then who should be the new CEO of CMLS? I have a name in mind.
Okay.
I want to see, but I want to see who you would put there.
Okay.
In an ideal world,
I could.
Who's your pick?
I would say this. I'm not going to give a name. I've said some names here before that have been in the ether here, right? But
Yeah.
I do think. I mean, Danae didn't come from the industry; she came outside the industry, right? So I think this next thing, I think it should be somebody in the industry. I think, and you know, some fair amount of experience, right? But not like a last thing here, right? I mean, some fair amount of experience. I think.
Come on, dude.
I'm not picking anybody, man. You're gonna. What do you want me to be killed or something? It's not happening.
Why would you get killed?
No.
You saying like this person would be a great, CEO of CMLS?
I mean, you know, there's the names that I'm hearing out there. I mean, a lot of them I can get behind for sure.
Who would you get behind?
No, I'm not doing this.
Why can I not get you to
I'm
commit?
not doing this, bro.
All right, fine. I will. So there's one name that makes all the sense in the world, right? If, again, no disrespect to anybody else, right? But to me, when you think about where CMLS is, what CMLS is, right? And kind of, especially if it's going to take over rulemaking authority, right? And with, sort of the people that are already there. I think the ideal person to be the next CEO of CMLS is Greg Robertson.
Jesus Christ. How did I get in this? And thanks, everybody, for joining the show. We appreciate you. And we'll see you next time.
Think about
it.
it.
4-star
because
review
I don't
on
think,
the Apple iPad.
Greg, stop. Here's the thing. I don't think it could be a current MLS CEO.
I have no experience running an MLS, dude.
Right. No, but neither did Danae, to your point. But it is someone from within. So I'm saying it needs somebody who understands the MLSs, has great relationships with them, but is not one of them. Right? I do think that. So that leaves like very few people, right? Very, very few people. And I think the role of that CEO of the CMLS is much more about sort of bringing the MLS together and having those strong-willed, strong opinionated leaders be able to talk and work with each other, right? Again, there are very few people with a track record of doing something like that, right? And the only one that makes sense to me, if it's not Sam DeBoard, right, because of the merger, right, the best person would be Greg Robertson. I dare anybody to tell me otherwise.
Yeah.
I would love to know who you think would be better suited for that role than Greg Robertson.
They just started the process, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of great candidates.
Save a lot of money. You could stop that process. I just saved you a ton of money.
I got too much work going on right now.
Go call Greg Robertson.
I got
call
too
Greg
many things going
Robertson.
on
Bring
right
him
now,
in.
and it's not.
You have very capable people within giant steps. Just saying, it just makes perfect sense for it to be.
Man, Rob, why did I bring this up? Jesus Christ!
It's entertaining. That's why. But it makes sense. All right. On the 2 versus 1 thing, I think they should be 2.
Okay.
But I think RESO should be completely changed. So maybe it ends up being 1, if that makes sense. Right. To your point, RESO's tech, right? So to me, RESO should be comprised of pretty much like 4 companies, maybe 5. Right? It should be Zillow, CoreLogic, Black Knight, FBS. Right? Because it's a standards organization. If those 4 companies agree on a standard, then everybody else can pile in.
Well, I mean,
and those 4 are the most
the vendor
important.
Community that making the third-party products really to contribute to that because of the unique needs they have.
You can contribute. No one's saying you can't contribute, right? But RESO should be those 4 companies, right? Like get rid of the board, get rid of like you just need those 4 companies because again, it's a standards organization. So if those 4 companies agree on what the standard ought to be, they could take feedback. Vendors could contribute feedback.
Get so much shit for this.
You don't need work groups. You don't need committees. You don't need any of this stuff.
Down on me.
It's 4 companies.
And this is live. We can't even not even publish this. This is just God. You're killing me.
What? I mean, one of them is the sponsor of this podcast, so we're saying like they should be 1/4 of RESO. Like, why is that? And the other 3 should be sponsoring this podcast.
Yes. Dang it.
Right. I think that would make a ton of sense. And then, CMLS probably should take over policy.
Yeah.
I think NAR de-risking is smart. It's already on its way, whether they want it or not. So, yeah, why not embrace it? Get ahead of the curve, for a change. Again, I ain't holding my breath for any of that to happen. Right? The only thing I'm pushing for is Greg Robertson.
Thanks, Rob.
To consider Greg. All right. What else went down in mid-year?
Oh no, we're at time. I think we're at time. I got a hard stop.
Not really. Yeah, almost. Yeah, almost. All right. So let's end with this. What was the most fun party? What was the best party of mid-year?
It was the Omni Bar, man. I mean, it
was Omni Bar.
I think because it's like the unparty, right? It's just like, hey, we're gonna meet here, show up. I think about all the money I've spent, like getting a hotel room and then the coffee service and all this and sending out invites and doing all the things and okay, some people show. And all I had to do with this is like put a blog post out and put it on Twitter and then boom, it just goes, right? I mean, I love that community that happens there.
Did anyone have any big parties?
Oh no, there was a few out there.
CoreLogic?
I think RE Technology had a party. No, everybody had different things there, right? So I visited a few. I went to Walt's kind of retirement party. That was kind of fun. Met a few people there, but yeah. I mean, to me, it's like I'm there to kind of meet clients and talk to people. So I'm, sometimes I try to make a rule of getting back to my room by midnight, which I did pretty well with. You would be proud of me, Rob.
Wow. We're getting old, man. God. We used to party.
Tell me about it.
We used to party in our 30s and even 40s because we're now it's like, nah, grandpa has to go to bed. It's that time. All right. Hopefully there's a new younger generation of vendors, out there.
There is.
Like, carrying the torch.
They're
partying,
going. Yeah.
Till the break of dawn.
I'm doing my, a French exit as much as I can. So.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to leave it there for this live stream. The next one will be the first Friday of July, I guess. I guess it's going to be pretty close to July 4th, and we'll see what changes between now and then. Otherwise, thank you all for coming. Thanks for listening. Thanks for paying attention to us. We appreciate it, and we will see you all next time. All right, thanks, everyone. Bye.